Hey, and welcome back to another great Saturday AMA Contempo Code Community. I'm great to be back here with you guys today. Very excited. It is a wonderful, wonderful weekend here, and I'm just glad to have you guys here to join in, to chat, to ask some questions. I've actually had a couple of questions written down that have come up over the past kind of week or two. It's been a crazy, crazy busy week. I don't know about you guys, but I tried to chill out just a little bit this summer and got sidetracked from that goal just a little bit. So I hope you all are having a wonderful, relaxing summer. I can't believe that we're just about halfway through. We're starting to see back to school springing up, believe it or not. And I am certainly not ready for summer to be over, but at least I have wonderful days like today that I can come and hang out with you guys, ask some questions. And I am sure in the next couple of months, we're going to be having a lot more people joining us. We're getting into the premium time where new medical students are going to be starting, right, for fall semester. So that's really, really exciting. Very cool to have that happening, have those new fresh blood coming in. So let's just go ahead and we will get started with the stream. Hey everyone, I'm Victoria. I'm a medical coder, auditor, educator, and content creator. And on my channel, I provide tips, tricks, and tutorials. And every Saturday, usually at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, unless we have to change times for some reason, I am here answering questions on medical billing, medical coding, certifications, mostly medical coding, and mostly certifications and career tips and all kinds of different advice that I can provide. Now, just to kind of give the disclaimer, none of this is legal advice. None of this is consulting advice. And I do not provide, hey, can you look at this chart and tell me how to code it advice live, because that would be, I don't know, a little bit boring, I think, to watch me do that live. There would be a lot of dead conversation as we're looking things up. So feel free to say hi to me and your friends in the chat. A lot of you are here every Saturday, which I am so incredibly, incredibly grateful for. So let's say hello to Janelle Welch. Glad to have you here for another Saturday Q&A. Marcy, hello, hello, hello. Great to have you here as well. Lily C., great to have you here. I'm happy to see that the videos have been performing well lately. I really am kind of pleased to see the feedback from some of the videos that I didn't think were going to go over super, super well, like little things like going over the neoplasm table, but apparently we're very, very much needed to have some walkthroughs in those particular areas. So hello to Lisa Clark. Hello to Tiffany. Hello to Emily. Jamie King, great to see you here. Mary Ellen. And Samantha, Aaron, Carol. Hey, Carol, great to see you here too. And Cindy Lou. So, that's not the button I wanted to press. I want to press this button. So hello to everyone. Hi, Susan. Zamora's coming in here. Passed your CPC exam yesterday, officially CPCA. Congratulations to Zamoria. I am so super thrilled for you. I'm guessing since yesterday was a Friday, you probably took it online. Definitely let me know in the comments. I'm curious how everything kind of went, and I'm sure some of the other people in the chat here would love to know as well. So let's start with our first question that came in, and then I'm going to get to some of the things that have come in just generally through the channel over the past week or so. Alive in my 50s and more is saying, hello, is it possible to learn medical billing on your own? Yeah, there are some resources that you can probably learn medical billing on your own. I know a little bit more about learning medical coding on your own versus learning medical billing on your own, but there are things you can do. So for example, the AAPC publishes study guides. If you are someone who is a very good self-study learner, and that is something you feel you could be successful with, not everyone can. Not everyone can just read a book and interpret it in the appropriate fashion and absorb it. Some people need a little bit more directed instruction, but some people can do that. So you might want to look into maybe just buying a study guide for the billing certification off of the AAPC. There are certain times you can take little courses maybe through your community college for cheap, and see what kind of references they use on those. So if you don't want to take that course through your community college, you can see what kind of books they're using. I usually for coding go through the step-by-step books. I think there might be a billing equivalent for that. I'm trying to remember what the book is that I used to use specifically for billing. I want to say it was something that Elsevier published. Let me look real quick and see if I can find it, because that was a pretty decent resource. I know they have one that is a book that's more geared towards billing versus coding. Fordney's medical insurance, that would be the one. So I think this is the one that one of the versions that I've seen in the, oh, I should probably connect that over. Hold on one second to connect my Chrome. It'll just be black for 1 second until I set that over there. There we go. So Fordney's medical insurance, that's when you could learn with billing. So maybe buy that book and buy the study guide for the CPB, get your CPB certification. I think that might be a good option if you're looking to do some self-study. So which is a good profession, medical scribe or coding as AI replacement point of view, which will vanished earlier by AI? So that's a hard thing to say, because you can make the argument that just about every single position out there could get replaced by AI. I was watching a TikTok the other day where a particular hotel was having trouble staffing bellhops and people within the hotel service line, and they hired a robot, and this robot is basically just programmed to take food into different hotel rooms. So now they've replaced those people, those positions where they were just taking the food from the kitchen and having the room service delivered to the door. So just about any job right now could be argued, oh, you're going to get replaced by AI. Pretty much anything. Medical coding, I do not think will be fully replaced by AI. I think there will be a lot of efficiencies. We've been using quote unquote AI, computer assisted coding, in medical coding and billing for 10, 20 years. So there's going to be probably some enhancements of that over the past few years. But until we get to the point where a robot, a algorithm, a program can defend you in court and interpret a very intense medical record, I don't foresee medical coding being replaced by AI. I do foresee there being changes. So some of the very basic things in medical coding, like this diagnosis is transcribed to this. And I actually, let's be honest, I've seen a lot of providers still not getting that correct, that they look up things in the EMR incorrectly and it takes them to the wrong ICD-10 diagnosis code. So medical scribes, I really haven't worked in scribing myself, so I can't advise exactly on what's going to happen there. I would foresee, because we're getting such an influx of newer physicians that are more savvy with doing these type of things themselves, more of the scribes we see kind of with the older physicians. So I would say medical coding would be less likely to be replaced by AI. But again, changes, the very, very basic functions, code lookup type things. If that's what you think medical coding is, those types of functions will be going away. And we may transition more into an intense auditing role, analyzing clinical information, etc. Patty, they're out of stock. Oh my gosh. So that probably just means, so all of my merchandise, and if you're interested, I do have merchandise available on my website. You can find it here on contempocoding.com. It is under the merch tab here. And that is all run by Teespring. So unfortunately, I don't have control over the stock because it's all produced and shipped and stuff through Teespring. So if they're out of tumblers, that means like the entirety of their stock of tumblers is out of stock. But I will check and see if maybe it's because they're replacing that with a different type of tumbler, and maybe I can just get it printed on a different style of tumbler, and they might be able to do that instead, because maybe they're just out of that specific type. So Aaron is saying, I have my CRC exam on July 27th. Good luck to you, Arun. If you're not aware yet, there is a video on the main channel that I do a little bit of a review for the CRC exam and talk about what are some of the pertinent things to pay attention to. So if you haven't already, make sure you go to the main channel and look for that CRC review video, because that is available and it's really, 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 really helpful. So one of the questions that came through the channel this week was about pay per chart work and what is pay per chart work. So there are positions in medical, there's different types of positions in medical coding. There's full-time W-2 employees, there's contracted W-9 employees, there's hourly rate, and then we actually have what's called pay per chart. So they might pay you a certain rate per chart that you complete, like $1 or $2 per chart that you complete. So if you're someone who can code really fast, like you're very, very focused, you could potentially make a lot of money if you can code a lot of charts in an hour. Now, the caveat to that is if you're coding a chart that says, 2 paragraphs on it and it takes you 2 minutes to code, and then you get a chart that is, 20 pages long and it takes you 2 hours, you're still only going to make that small amount for that large chart. So it gets a little bit tricky when you're coding to pace yourself for the long charts and try not to rush through those long charts and not potentially code them correctly, versus the hourly, where you have to keep up with a productivity versus that your wage being dependent on how fast your code. So yeah, pay per chart, not paper chart. So when you have a pay per chart, you're paid a certain amount per chart that you complete. And sometimes you might want to try it out and see if it's a lucrative thing for you. If you're someone who is very focused in and can get a lot of charts coded in an hour. However, not everyone has the focus to do that, and you might wind up finding out that some of the charts that they're sending you are very, very long. So I have a question here from Imaginary Dreams. Few days out, feeling very low, so unable to study. Can you please share some tips to set a routine or make a timetable which helps me? By the way, I'm a newbie in ED coding. So not sure if you're a newbie, like you're certified and just starting out in the ED. That's kind of what I'm getting the impression of. The trick is, it is hard. It's a very difficult thing when you're just learning. I don't have a lot of tricks other than sometimes you can gamify what you're doing. Like if you want to say, hey, I want to try and set a goal for myself and set small chunks of goals. So today I'm going to do X amount of charts. So I typically do 20 charts in a day. Today I'm going to try and do 22 charts in a day. And maybe that's just 22 charts in a day all week. Or you can say, today I'm going to give myself a break, or today I'm going to be kind to myself. So break down like what your goals are, like what you're typically doing, and say, what is that one step above that I can work on tomorrow? And then if you hit that tomorrow, go, okay, well now what's the one step above that I can hit for tomorrow? Unfortunately, there's not a lot of tips I can give as far as look at this, look at your book, but that's kind of some structures that I use. I try to focus on not going from 0 to 60. I focus on 1% better every day. So what are those small achievable goals that I can make to get to that same goal in a longer amount of time, versus when you're trying to go from, someone who's not exercised in the past year to someone who's, going to beast mode, because you're just going to drain yourself and get frustrated trying to do that. So make those small, little achievable steps. Hey, Patty Tucker, that is a great step forward. So you must be doing something right. Yesterday, the senior coder in the office gave you the go ahead to stop sending claims and start sending them right out on your own. That's awesome. So she must be very, very confident in your abilities. That means you're absolutely making moves into the right direction. Very excited for you and very excited for that step up. So Staff Tie is saying, I'm confused about the exam versus review of systems for E&M. Do you count the bullets per organ system in the exam only, and then just the organ systems for the review of systems? So let me grab out my scorecard so we can talk about that based off of the prior guidelines. Let's see what this is. Review of systems and exam. Okay, cool. Let me get my camera over here just a little bit better set up. Okay, there we go. So I hope you can see this. Let me move it down just a little bit so you can see some of the information better. So this is one of the E&M scorecards that I use for the non-office visit levels, where we're still scoring based off of review of systems and exam. So if you look here we go. If we look here at review of systems, I'm losing all my dry erase markers because my kid keeps taking them. This one's already filled out. Let's see if I can get it cleaned up just a little bit. There we go. So we have 14 components for review of systems: constitution, eyes, ears, nose, throat, cardiovascular, respiratory, gastrointestinal, genitourinary, musculoskeletal, integumentary, which is skin or breast, neuro, psych, endo, heme, lymph, and allergy or immuno, and then the box for all others negative. So when we're counting here, we're counting each review of systems area. So these are the 14 areas. So if you would have ears, nose, mouth, throat, that would be one area. You don't have to have all of them. You could just have ears, and that counts for that box. If you have musculoskeletal, so maybe no joint pain, that would count for that box. And then you would count them for that amount of areas that you have here. The other thing you can do with review of systems is you have to have, for a complete review of systems, 10 or more of these individual systems here listed under the review of systems, or one pertinent positive with a statement that all others are negative. So that will count for the complete review of systems. If you have one pertinent positive and say all other systems were reviewed, all other systems were negative. Now with the exam, we have either body areas or we have organ systems. So it has to be one or the other. You can't mix or match. So we could count something like normal bowel sounds. We could count that under abdomen, or we could count that under GI. But we can't count that as two, because it has to be we're either counting the body areas or we're counting the body system. So we can't mix and match both of these. So I think that's what you're kind of asking about, with review of systems. This is our 14 systems, so you can count whatever out of here. But it either has to be body areas or organ systems out of them. So one element could count for one thing up in the body areas, and it could count for the thing of organ systems. But we're not going to count this as two. We're going to count it as one for body areas or one for organ system. I hope that made sense. Samir is asking, hey ma'am, nice to see you live. The coding books are expensive, and I think I can't find the practical guidelines for the career. It's confusing too. Can you help me or answer my questions? So coding books are expensive. Unfortunately, that is one of the caveats of being a medical coder. You cannot use photocopied books for the exam. You cannot use scans. It's copyright infringement, unfortunately, if you try to get black market books. So I would discourage from doing that. But there is a lot of cost associated with being a medical coder, not just books, but certifications, etc. And as far as practical guidelines for the career, you can check out the main channel page. I have lots of videos about getting started in medical coding. But as far as individual type of tutoring or mentoring, those sort of services, I do offer, but they are at a premium price just because of my years of experience, etc. I have a question here from Sarah coming in. I have a master's degree and about 10 years of experience working in higher education. Awesome. Now I've made the jump into medical coding world, passed the CPC exam, and working on Practicode. Now, when employers are reviewing applications, do you believe they take into consideration my education level and other professional experience? Do you think they are considering that since I'm a brand new coder? I think it will look very good as far as if they want to hire you or not. They will probably see you as someone who wants to move up the career ladder. So if they have a good structure that they're looking for people to grow within the organization, to move up in the organization, I think that's something that they will find appealing, particularly if you're interested in maybe moving up into an auditing and physician education type of role. And I have known coders who have done that they used to be in education and now they work in physician education. So there is that career ladder that you can potentially find. The thought process that I'm thinking, though, is when they're calculating like your pay, there's certain things that they're going to think of when they're going to determine whether or not you're going to get a higher pay as a coder, right? So do you know certain software? Are you able to work with certain programs? Are you familiar with working with physicians? Have you done coding in the past? Have you done auditing in the past? Have you worked in billing in the past? Have you worked with health insurance in the past? So there's certain things that will carry over as far as maybe applications of using things like Outlook or working in an office environment or in Teams. But as far as looking at you and going, oh, well, she has a master's degree, that means we have to pay her more. I'm not sure if that will come into consideration with pay, but it will certainly place you as a much better candidate as a medical coder versus someone who maybe does not have a degree. Janelle is asking a question. Anyone going through the hiring process, although most coding jobs are remote, when it comes to interviewing and training, are they requiring COVID vaccines? I have not yet seen any organizations require you to have a COVID vaccine, at least not yet. I have seen a lot of organizations that, I don't want to say require a flu shot in the past few years, but they will say you either need to get your flu shot by X date, or you have to wear a mask through the end of flu season. I could foresee maybe some organizations taking that sort of stance, saying maybe you have to get your vaccine. If you don't get a vaccine, you have to mask up if you are patient facing. So as far as if you're remote, I highly doubt that they're going to make you get vaccinated if you're exclusively working remotely. I'm in a medical coding class right now. Is there more than one way to search for a main term? So I'm assuming you're going to talk about ICD-10-CM coding. When we're looking for the main term in ICD-10-CM, what I always say is start with whatever is not the body area, organ, basically joint, place, whatever, because if you've ever watched the short video that I did about C condition. So if you're looking for something like leg pain and you look at the word leg, it's going to tell you to look for the condition, which does not mean to look up the word condition. It means what's the condition of the leg. It's in pain. So you look at that word pain. So that can help kind of guide you to what that main term is that you're looking for. So don't look for a place or body or spot, organ, anything like that. Look for, kind of think that in your mind, like what's the condition of that particular thing. So headache might be under headache. Well, actually headache is probably under headache, but leg laceration isn't under leg, it's under laceration and then under leg. So that could be something that can help you find that main term a little bit easier. Demetrius, good to see you in here, my friend. So you know what, Woo Woo One, I heard that exact same podcast episode. So what do I think of the Andrew School in Oklahoma? Melissa Freeman I heard that interview that she did with Brian at Medical Coding Geek, and she said that the Andrew School is very great. I don't have any personal experience. I don't know anyone who has gone to the Andrew School, and I try not to speak too much about individual organizations and coding institutes, just kind of a little bit for liability purposes, because I don't want to speak unfavorably about a certain organization or favorably, et cetera, et cetera. But what I do What I have done, because I don't want to provide individual recommendations, is I actually developed a partner to assist me with that. So I have an individual partnership. Not that I'm trying to discourage anyone from going to the Andrews School, because I heard that same podcast and heard that same feedback that they're great. But I have a partnership with onlinedegree.com. So if you're someone who's looking into getting into a medical billing and coding program, I partnered with onlinedegree.com, and they basically developed a quiz that asks a lot of the same questions that I would ask you. Where are you located? How much money can you spend? How soon do you need to be done? Are you planning on doing this fully remote? Do you want books shipped to you? And they offer special discounts and potentially additional offers to just my viewers. So if you go to, there it is, onlinedegree.com/contempo, you can answer the quiz there. And they only work with accredited schools and universities. So you never have to worry that you're getting into a program that's not going to be there in 2 years, or they have a very low success rate. So you will definitely get a official certificate from an accredited school going through them. So Patty, that's a great tip as well. Patty's saying, my teacher told us to think about reading the problem backwards when trying to look things up. Bruise on the arm, look for the arm, and then the bruise, contusion. So actually you would look for, now I think you actually look for contusion in those. So yeah, so you would look for contusion and then go down to arm. Demetrius, how long does it take to complete your CRC course? Let me think. So I've known a couple of people who have taken it and been done in 2 weeks. If you're already familiar, and as an RHIT, you probably are, with ICD-10-CM coding. You don't have to go through a lot of the guide practice with just basic code lookup. You know about the business of healthcare. So the program that I have, if I remember correctly, let me go on my website so I can kind of take a look. I know I want to say it's 12 hours of video instruction, if I remember correctly. And of course, then you need to attribute extra time for studying, for taking quizzes, for doing the final exams, and that's all included. So if anyone's interested in becoming a certified risk adjustment coder, I do have a course online. There's a little preview so that you can kind of see here what the course looks like before purchasing it. And I do have some free CEU courses as well, if you're ever worried about, like, oh, is the tech here going to work for me? You can check and make sure that that is working so that you can access the courses, etc. So yeah, I have 12 CEUs for it if you're already certified through the AAPC. So it's about 12 hours of video instruction. And I can actually give you, so it's broken down by chapter. I could give you a little bit of a preview, but I don't think I've done that in the past. But yeah, lots of great feedback. Everyone that's taken the course so far has passed. And there is an option to add on the ebook study guide. The ebook study guide is $60. If you want a paper study guide, you can buy that through the AAPC website. Okay, so Demetrius, you already got the practice study guide, so you're good. You are good. So CJ says, my career step medical coding course claims AAPC has recognized the practicum as an equivalent of years of experience. Would this mean that I can get the A removed right after I take the CPC exam? It depends. I'm not exactly certain what their setup is. Typically what happens is, in order to get your A removed, you have to have 2 years experience or the equivalent. So there's a couple of things that will remove 1 year of experience off of that 2-year requirement. One is going through an accredited program that the AAPC has their curriculum, or you've done 80 contact hours of education and you can get something printed out on your school's letterhead saying, yes, you had 80 hours of education. That'll remove 1 year. And the Practicode that AAPC offers, and I believe other organizations offer the same, if not a similar type of Practicode, that also removes 1 year. So assuming that particular program has 80 contact hours of education and they have that practicum, you could, if it meets the AAPC's requirements, have that apprenticeship status removed. Yeah, so Melissa Miller here, she's saying, I passed CRC thanks to you, Victoria. Absolutely. That's great, Melissa. I'm always so excited when I hear people pass. That just makes me so incredibly happy. So Janelle is asking about CEUs. If I complete CEUs in August of 2021 and then complete the CRC cert, do I get credit for the August 2021 CEU? I've heard some people say yes. I have heard some coders who had like their CPC and then got their CPB later on, that all of their CEU bank that they kind of had before that, some of it would attribute to that new certification. Now, I don't want to say for sure it does, because for all I know, that might be like a glitch in the CEU system, but I have heard that say before, but that really does kind of come up to the AAPC's decision. Da-da, da-da, da-da. Any major behavioral health codes in 2021? I'm not sure yet. I haven't had a chance to look at, I know the ICD-10-CM updates are in, and I'm going to hopefully get to them in the next few weeks so I can do some updated material. CPT isn't available yet, so I don't know specifically to behavioral health what may or may not have changed. I haven't heard anything specific yet, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't anything out there. Melissa, any luck on making a COC prep course on Contempo? Stacy saying sometimes I miss questions for not using a Z code. A lot of times they're not mentioned with the other codes being used. Use additional code for. Are those sections just something we need to memorize? It's just something I would suggest kind of being familiar with. So a lot of your Z codes are going to be, let me think. Some of them are in like your status codes. Some of them I think might be in your external causes. Not necessarily, no, that's really more Y's and X's versus your Z codes. The Z code section isn't really very large. What you can do is kind of look at the index of what's in here, the little where is I? You can kind of look at what's in there. So if you're missing codes, and let's say there may be contact with a certain type of thing, or exposure to, or tobacco use maybe, you can find, if you look just right here at the beginning, they give you the different categories up here. So first off, persons encountering health services for exams, genetic carriers, resistance to antimicrobial drugs, estrogen receptor status. So if you kind of get more familiar with the structure of the categories, then you can see how the categories, you can get more familiar with how to pick out the different things that you're looking for. I don't see a lot for things like blood type, but I guess it depends on what you're coding or whether or not you need those particular Z codes. But sometimes they are kind in the ICD-10-CM manual, and they do tell you the additional information that you need to use for those Z codes, but not always. Not always. Yeah, if you're having trouble with the video, I would suggest just hitting reload. I know sometimes that helps me. Like if there was a tiny little glitch or something in the transfer of the data, if you reload, sometimes that'll kind of pick it back up. So is there places to get free CEUs from places other than the AAPC? So there's a bunch of places to get free CEUs. So of course, the AAPC ones you probably already know about since you're mentioning them. Healthcare Business Monthly, that is available on the AAPC website. They have the archives all available that as a member you have access to them. So if you go to resources, so yeah, if you go on the website to resources, magazine, Healthcare Business Monthly, you can have access to all the archives there, and then you can do the test yourself in order to get CEUs. There's also some free CEUs that they have available quarterly as an AAPC member. So there's, let's see here, resources. It might only come in if I'm logged in, but usually I think it's around here when you're logged in. It says free CEUs. There's a couple other places you can check online. CMS has some. I have one on my website. I'm working on some additional ones. I'm actually hoping to do a live webinar soon. My presentation that I did recently on avoiding coder burnout has been very highly requested, so hoping to get that up. and do that as a live webinar. Brian has something together. He bundles it, I think, under the Medical Coding Geek stuff. So it's probably under medicalcodinggeek.com where he has the hit list, and you can find CEUs there. The other thing is there is a Facebook group called Free and Cheap CEUs for AAPC. Imagine Solutions has a bunch. Let me see if I can bring their website up. I found they just posted a couple that they have coming up. Imagine Solutions CEUs, but they're not always the best with sending out the certificate afterwards. So sometimes if you don't get the certificate, they're just not going to get it to you. Imagine Solutions, upcoming webinars. So it looks like maybe they don't have anything right now, but if you subscribe to, oh wait, here we go. July, here we go. Oh yeah, they're already done for July. So they'll probably be setting up their August one soon. But if you go to imaginesolutions.com, they usually have a free webinar every month or so that has free CEUs. You can check your local Medicare contractor. So I'm in Novitas. You can check them and see if they have CEUs as well. So mine does, and I think like some of the other Medicare contractors do as well. How long could I use the 2021 coding books before I absolutely have to buy the 2022 books? It depends. Ideally, you should buy new books every year. If you're not employed yet, that can be tough. Usually your employer will give you new books or give you an encoder or some sort of similar program that will give you access to code lookup. So one of the things to consider is, are you testing? So if you are testing in 2021, you probably don't need to rush then and buy the 2022 books. If you're testing in 2022, you should probably, it's highly encouraged that you have the current year's books for 2022 if you're testing in 2022. If you're still studying, or if you're already certified and you're kind of like, I don't really want to spend the money. Not sure when I'm gonna buy, when I'm gonna need the next books. You can make do with your 2021 and watch some of the webinars on the updates, or find a printout of the updates sometimes and utilize that. I have access to Codify. So my Codify program will give me a listing of all of the different updates. So if you have access to something like that, you could probably prolong it a little longer. You wouldn't need to have your 2022 book, unless you're worried about looking something up and missing it because of not having it right there in the book. So Steph says, I'm already have my CPC, but it seems employers are requiring exams in the interview process. So yeah, that is a common thing in medical coding, that they have you take a pre-employment exam, because they want to make sure that while you may have done very, very well on the CPC exam, passed it, you're certified, right, you're good to go. Some people are just really good test takers, and they're good at selecting one thing out of a selection of 4, but they want to make sure that you're going to be apt for getting an operative report or an E&M note and being able to select the right code without just picking something out of the option of 4. So sometimes they even just want to assess, like, do you know a certain type of coding that they do there? So if it's a urology practice, they're going to want to make sure that you're familiar with urology coding, or maybe just know if where you're kind of where your skill level is right now, so they can evaluate how much training they may have to put into you. So if they give you a pre-employment exam and you do fantastic on it, they might go, oh, well, this is great. This candidate does not need an extensive amount of training. If you don't do so well, then they might go, oh, okay, well, we have to prepare ourselves if we hire this person, that they might need some additional training and some additional resources. Sarah is asking about the scores on exams. So, do employers want to know what you scored on the exam, and/or score breakdowns to see what sections you did well on and areas where you may need improvement? If so, do you know how to request a score breakdown from AAPC? Called customer service, didn't hear back. So there's a couple different layers to this. First off, I have not heard of many cases at all where employers will ask for your score breakdown. I have heard of a one or two here or there, but generally speaking, they don't. I'm not saying that all of them won't ask for that, but there may be one or two out there that do. Uncommon. If they would ask, I would find it even more uncommon if they would ask for your breakdown. Now, some people, because they score so well on the exam, they want to give that information willingly, right? They want to say, hey, I got a 98 on my medical coding exam. So that would be certainly something to be proud about, right? However, most employers aren't typically requesting for your scores. As far as do you want to see your breakdowns, if you took the exam in person, if I remember correctly, and they may have changed this, but if I remember correctly, I know if you fail, they definitely give you your exam breakdown. If you pass, I'm not sure if they do or don't. Because I know previously they didn't give you the exam breakdown. I think that may or may not have changed by now, so I'm not sure. But you can definitely get it from the AAPC. You just have to request it. As far as if you took it online, you do absolutely have to request it. They do not give your exam breakdowns if you're taking it online. Currently, that might change. That might change in the future, but right now, if you take your exam online, the breakdown has to be requested. Lisa is asking a good question. When coding more than one diagnosis, does it matter which order to list them in? In some cases, yes. Typically, we have in the pro-fee coding world the first listed diagnosis. In the inpatient world, they call it the primary diagnosis. So a little bit of difference of terminology. But in pro-fee coding, the first listed diagnosis is usually the primary driving reason why that patient received healthcare services for that day. There's also sequencing guidelines. So in ICD-10-CM, you may find out that certain codes have to get coded before certain other codes, or certain codes have to get coded after certain other codes. A great example of this is our codes for OB care. So if you look at the guidelines for Chapter 15, which is our pregnancy coding, all of those O codes in Chapter 15 for pregnancy take sequencing priority. So anything that starts with an O will be listed first prior to other codes. Some of the codes, they're very nice. They give you some guidance on there. When you look it up, it says code first, and it gives you a code first instruction, which means something else has to come first. Some of them say, well, use additional code if applicable, and they'll give you a list of additional codes saying, hey, there's something that has to come after this code. If it's something where there are no specific sequencing guidelines, there's no, you have your first listed or primary diagnosis, and then there's just a myriad of other things going on with the patient, and there's no specific guidelines to those. It doesn't always matter as much what goes first, what doesn't come first, if it's just, 12 different diagnoses going on in E&M. We also have to consider linkage. So say, for example, we have a patient, they're coming in for their diabetes and hypertension, and we bill a 99213, that office visit. That will get linked up to the office visit, the diagnosis code for diabetes, the diagnosis code for hypertension. But if they also come in there and they have a cerumen removal, and there's a code for an impacted cerumen, that code for the impacted cerumen diagnosis has to get attached to that procedure code for the removal of the impacted cerumen. So some linkage there as well, in addition to sequencing. Line is asking, are there any courses or books you could recommend to help with ICD-10-CM coding? It just so happens that there is a course that I have just on ICD-10-CM coding. So that's on my website. Let's see here. It is ICD-10-CM Essentials. It's $22.99. Very affordable course. The other thing you can do is I actually have some resources on the website as well. So if you go to One second. The main channel page, I have a video on the ICD-10-CM coding guidelines. So that's a whole playlist that you can just basically binge watch on all the different guidelines. Now, some of it is a little bit dry. So some sections are a little bit of me just reading through it, but I try to interject with examples and things as I'm able to for the intense ICD-10-CM guidelines that we have. So getting familiar with the guidelines too is another thing you can do. Just reading through the ICD-10-CM guidelines a little bit can sometimes make things piece together a little bit better. How to start as a freelancer and is it worthy? It's tough to start as a freelancer. There are positions for freelancers. I actually just did a freelance position myself, but it was something where I very much had to hit the ground running. And I think most of the other people on the project probably had to kind of hit the ground running, meaning that I was just basically given a bunch of work to do and had to figure out, with not a lot of instruction, how to get through it. I didn't have to be trained on this is how you work this system, this is how you log in, this is how you look up a code, this is how you input it. So a lot of freelance positions aren't things where they also want to spend a lot of time training you on how to use systems and things. So there are freelance positions out there. They're just harder to come by, and usually they're for coders that have a higher skill set. In most cases in medical coding, and I don't want to make it seem like they don't exist, because clearly there are freelance projects out there. But it's not like you can just be like, hey, I'm a freelance coder now. Come give me work. There are places like Fiverr.com where you can post for your services, and people may or may not hire you based off of what you're offering there. Those are websites just for freelancers. There's also Upwork.com, UPWORK.com. It's more common to find things like per diem work in medical coding. So maybe someone's going on vacation or they're clearing out a backlog, and you can find those more easily in medical coding. Freelance is a little bit tougher, especially for newbie coders. The other thing you have to consider if you want to do freelance work, and I did just make a video about this, a day in the life of a medical coder remote. I think it's called Freelancer. The other thing you have to consider is your benefits. So you're going to have to pay for your own health insurance. You're going to have to pay for your own vision, dental. I carry liability insurance. So I pay quite a bit of money to an insurance company so that if anything happens with say, I give inappropriate consulting advice, I code things incorrectly, I would be protected in the event of a legal suit. I also have to pay for my own books, encoders, tools. So there's a lot of startup costs, even with being a freelancer, because you have to be prepared with all of those tools to use for those types of positions. By the way, if you haven't already, don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, like, share, subscribe, and share with your friends. Hey, so Janelle is saying that VOT, virtual office temps, sometimes has OPPs for coding. So there's another resource you can check into, definitely. Also, if you haven't already and you want to join the Contempo Code community, I do have channel membership available that you can look into. I have different tiers available from $1.99 a month to $9.99 a month. If you are at the gold or platinum level, you can get your name added to the end credits for all my videos. Platinum level, you get behind the scenes footage and outtakes. And everyone at every membership level, of course, supports me and the channel, but also you get custom emojis and community only posts. Yep. Let's see. What is the difference between the Bucks and the AAPC ICD-10-CM manual? I've not used the Bucks version before. If I remember correctly, though, the AAPC version, and I think this changes next year, but currently the 2021 AAPC version only has the ICD-10-CM manuals in the front. I believe they're changing that for next year, and they're going to have the ICD-10-CM guidelines for the specific chapters at the beginning of the chapters as well. I've heard some people say that they love the Bucks version. They think it's fantastic. Currently, though, one thing that I will mention is that AHEMA on their current list of approved books won't take AAPC books. So if you're looking to get an AHEMA certification, that's something that you want to definitely look into. Make sure that the books you're purchasing are on their approved list. The AAPC version, I actually like it for if you're taking the CPC exam, because they put a lot of material in there that I think helps you out in the event of the CPC exam. So there's some additional grids in there and additional illustrations that will help you out specifically for the CPC exam. As far as what individually is in the box for the exam, I haven't seen it in quite some time. I think I might have had a Bucks version many years ago when I was teaching. So not entirely sure. Office is scrambling right now. Place of service 22 for internal med. Oh my gosh, a place of service can mess you all up. That absolutely can mess you all up. And depending too on, just from what I understand, because I'm not the biggest on credentialing, depending on how things are credentialed, that can mess up your place of services as well. Yeah, Emily is saying that Bucks has the guidelines both in the front and the right. So that I love. That is a great feature. Hey, Carolyn, thank you for subscribing to the channel. That's a great feature, especially for things like your CRC exam. It's great to have your ICD-10-CM chapter guidelines right in front of that chapter. So what I mean by that is if I'm looking for something for chapter 13 and I'm like, what's in my chapter 13 guidelines? I can't remember. Well, in the AAPC version, let me move you up a little bit. In the AAPC version, there's no guidelines here. It just starts chapter 13 and there's some happy little tips and stuff in here and some anatomy stuff, but not the actual guidelines for this chapter. Some of the editions that they have out there, like the Optum version and apparently the Bucks, if you're looking for something in chapter 13 and you're like, what the heck are my chapter 13 guidelines? You can go right to the front of chapter 13 and there's all the guidelines. There's my keyboard too. Let's move over a little bit. So that's handy. It definitely saves some time, especially with exams. Oh, I know I saw something up here. Do I offer the CPB course? So with the AAPC, as far as licensing material, they will only allow approved instructors to license the materials to teach certifications that they currently have. And I currently don't have my CPB. I have a test voucher that expires in about 3 months to take it. So I probably should sit for it soon. But currently, if I were to offer a CPB course, I would have to develop the entire curriculum all by myself versus licensing the materials off of the AAPC and then kind of adapting it for my audience, which is typically what I do. I license the material from the AAPC and then just do my own enhancements and explanations and videos and animations, etc., and add that in. So might be down the pipeline, but currently not offering CPB. Another question came through this week about apprenticeship removal, and I probably should have addressed this when we were talking about apprenticeship removal earlier, but someone brought up the thought of, do you have to, in order to get your apprenticeship status removed, do coding? Does your title have to be medical coder? And the answer to that is actually no. You don't have to be titled a medical coder and do day-to-day medical coding necessarily to remove your apprenticeship status. So I can show you what it says on the AAPC website. So on the AAPC website, they have all the information on how to remove that A for your apprentice status. And one of the things it tells you is that you have to verify 2 years on the job experience if you're going for the 2 years experience versus the Practicode and the 80 contact hours of education. And it says, hey, thank you for subscribing to the channel. So it says here, where is it? Oh, I know it used to say, it says something in here about just using, oh, here we go. Verifying 1 year on the job experience externship using the CPT ICD-10-CM level code sets. It doesn't necessarily say coding. So just using CPT, using ICD-10-CM, and using HCPCS. So I have seen coders in the past, and again, it's a case-by-case basis, but I have seen coders in the past that have done things like claim edits, and because they were doing claim edits on CPT and they were doing claim edits on ICD-10-CM and had to be familiar with the codes that they were working with, they were granted removal of their apprentice status because they were utilizing the code sets. Even though they weren't hands-on coding them themselves, they were still utilizing those code sets. So that is ultimately the consideration of the AAPC, but I have seen coders who have had their apprenticeship status removed just by the experience using those code sets, not necessarily coding themselves though. So I have gotten a question recently, and I saw something coming earlier through chat about, and I don't want to name certifications because I don't want to get in trouble, but there are, when I talk about medical coding certifications, I talk a lot about AAPC and I talk a lot about AHIMA, and there's a very good reason for that because those are our major brands in medical coding. The AAPC and AHIMA, they're like the Coke and Pepsi of the medical coding world. There are other brands out there, but they're kind of off brands, maybe not as popular. If you're considering a coding certification and it's through a different organization, I'm not telling you don't get it. I absolutely am not saying that. There's some, if you want to get additional certifications, you want to get additional degrees, and that's what you're inspiring to do, absolutely. I'm not going to tell you not to. But as far as are employers looking for those, are they going to make you more marketable? There is a tip I can give you as far as that kind of goes. So I know that if I go on to Indeed.com and I type in here CPB, the Certified Professional Biller Certification, which is one of AAPC's certification, it'll bring up all types of jobs that are looking for that particular certification, right? If there's other certifications out there, I'll just make something up. Not sure if this is a real certification, but usually if you type it in here into Indeed.com, see, that looks like it was an actual certification. Let me add like an X or something on there. Oh, it changed it to something else. There we go. See, it's now changing it. Stop that. If you type in an additional type of certification and nothing comes up, that probably means that there's no jobs out there that are looking for that certification. So if you type in some string of certification letters, type that in there, and nothing comes up on Indeed, employers aren't really looking for it. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad certification to have, that you shouldn't get that certification, but it's probably not something that your employer is going to go, I want you to have this certification, versus something like a CPC or a CPMA or a CPB, where you can clearly see it's bringing up jobs because people are looking for those credentials. Thank you, CJ. I greatly, greatly appreciate you joining channel membership. Congratulations on joining the Contempo Code community. So we have about 2 minutes left here. Yeah, so Emily, the AAPC book, and I think they're changing it for next year, which is going to be fantastic, but having to flip back and forth through those guidelines, because like I said, if I'm here on chapter 13 and I want to look for my chapter 13 guidelines, I got to flip all the way back to my guidelines, and then I got to find chapter 13. And it's a lot easier to just have them in front of that chapter versus having to flip all the way back. But there's a lot of so many other extras in the AAPC version that I love, that I absolutely love. Like I think there's one for a decision tree there's a cause and effect relationship between hypertension and chronic kidney disease and hypertension and heart disease. So there's a little decision tree in the AAPC version that helps you select the right codes for that. And I absolutely love them for that particular feature in there. So that might not be in some of the other editions out there. All right. Well, believe it or not, we are actually at our hour. I want to thank you all so much for coming in, for joining channel membership, for subscribing, for coming in and asking your questions, your comments, your concerns. I am so grateful to be here every single Saturday to hang out with you guys. If you have questions, make sure that you come back next week because I'll be doing an AMA again next Saturday. I will be posting videos as usual, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I actually have a fun kind of coding adventure thing coming up. Oh my God, I almost forgot to show you guys. I almost forgot. I have to do this in my last minute. I forgot to show you my mermaid tiara that Paula got me. This is my fan, Paula Neary, sent this to me in my P.O. box. This is my mermaid tiara. I had no idea what a mermaid tiara was going to look like, but is this not the cutest thing? So yeah, I have another coding adventure coming up. Hopefully I can get it all edited this week. It is not the mermaid coding adventure just yet, though that may be on the line. We'll have to see. I will see you guys next week. Until then, just keep on coding on.